Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sunil Rajguru, editor with Cyber Media, and your host for today's live webinar. A warm welcome to you all, and thank you for joining us for our discussion today around standards-based defense in-depth cybersecurity for operational technology. I would like to welcome, I would like to welcome, one minute. I would like to welcome Aasef Iqbal, Senior Specialist OT Cybersecurity Fortinet, and Farhan Akhtar, CIO of Radico Khaitan. We will start with a small presentation, then we'll have a panel discussion and also a question and answer session. You can start sharing your question from now itself in the chat window. Also, do share your views with us in the feedback form at the end of the webinar. Now, let me begin with the proceedings. Ashok, can you show the PPT?
Sir, we can see your screen. Just switch to PPT.
Ashok, I want your Ashok. Can you please put your PPT?
Just a minute.
Yeah. Give me a minute while we set up the PPT. Yeah, okay. So just sorry for that slight delay. Now I'll just start with a small presentation. You know, all of us, we take cybersecurity for granted, but cybersecurity is a 24/7 affair. And the main reason for that is the hackers never sleep. So that is the topic of my small PPT today. Ashok, next. Yeah, so I'm Sunil Rajguru. I'm executive editor with PCQuest and CiOL. And okay, let's begin. So now, if you see, Ashok, yeah. So basically, if you see, like this year, we're suddenly hit with the COVID crisis. So everyone usually thinks that everybody is a good person and we'll start sorting out the problems, and the entire human race will start sorting out whatever problems have to be there. But the hackers are not like that. Hackers are always looking for any special occasion. Whether it's New Year, whether it's some celebrity becomes famous, hackers, in fact, target these times to double and triple their attacks. In fact, during COVID-19, we have seen unprecedented attacks. So I would call them COVID-19 criminals. If you see phishing, malware, ransomware, everything has increased manifold. In fact, initially when the crisis broke out, the World Health Organization was trying to help. So the hackers decided to target the WHO. The WHO announced that in the first week itself, it got a 5-fold increase in attacks. Right. And hackers were very innovative, claiming they had emergency supplies, surgical masks, medical documents. They came out with, videos that will tell everything about Corona. And based on that, they launched their attacks. In fact, apart from WHO, the URL attacks and spam attacks increased 100-fold. I'm going back to when the crisis began. So when the statistics came out, Aasef and Farhan will know, it was like 100 times increase, 200 times increase, 300 times increase. So the attacks were unprecedented. Okay, Ashok, next screen. So basically, there's another problem that we are facing is now, before your office was your fort, right? Most of the work was done out of office, and everybody would sit in office, and you had to secure the office. You had an IT team, you had an IT head, you had an IT instructor whose job was to secure the office. But now that's not happening. The first thing was, we have started using our mobile for work, and now the hackers are targeting your applications in your mobile. So the attacks have started moving from the network layer to the application layer, and all our mobile phones have become office instruments. So basically, they're targeting the application. So basically, now we have reached a stage where everything has to be protected, whether it's your office computer, desktop, your mobile, even your Wi-Fi. So at home, you may have secured everything, but you may have a unsecure Wi-Fi connection. Even that could be. So again, you're working from home. All our children are using their school classes. So the threats have increased manifold. So basically, it is very important that the right infrastructure, tools, and controls are not only in the office, but they're at home also. So you need well-defined response guidelines even in the home. And we have to build cyber resilience everywhere. Ashok, next screen, please. And so this was yesterday, this was today. And if you see going forward, things are going to become even tougher. Like say 5G is coming. People talk, like 5G, they think it's just a mobile service. No, it's not a mobile service. 5G will power entire smart cities. If you see, the 5G towers will be everywhere. They will power smart cities. They will power smart factories. You will have connected smart cars. Even the utilities will be there. And IoT devices will be everywhere. So for people who don't know, like the internet of people is like desktops and laptops, where like I am a person, I'm sitting in front of my laptop, right? So that is the internet of people. But if you look at the internet things, it could be a internet device in utilities, in a traffic signal that is consistently giving data. Today already we have more IoT devices than there are people on earth. And one estimate says that you could have 500 billion IoT devices by 2030. Yeah, that's the highest number. So you can imagine going forward. I mean, first you talked of security in the office, then you talked of security at home. But going forward, the entire cities, factories, cars, everything will be connected. And we probably will have to secure the entire globe. So I just like, if people still don't realize what is the importance of cybersecurity is getting more and more key issues, and it is getting all pervasive. So with that, I'll end my presentation. Ashok, you can stop the screen sharing. And so I would now like to invite Aasef for his presentation. So before we begin, let me tell you a bit about Aasef. Aasef is Senior Specialist OT Cybersecurity in Fortinet. He helps with solving cybersecurity challenges involving operational technology and critical infrastructure industries. He has more than a decade of experience in cybersecurity architecture, risk management, penetration testing, assurance, and compliance for critical infrastructure. So over to you, Aasef.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Sunil. And I'm following up on the same agenda. As you have said, that it's going to be a very interconnected world, and there are going to be ripple effect for the attacks. It's not just going to be the infrastructure that's going to be under attack. It's going to be the whole connected ecosystem that will be the part of the whole cyber attack itself. Just want to confirm from your end if you're able to see my full screen and my voice is clear.
If you can continue.
Yep. So the session is basically is going to cover 5 bullet points that includes the introduction of threat landscape, kind of what's happening currently in the industry, and then moving on to what industry standards we can utilize for implementing cybersecurity controls, how a cybersecurity infrastructure looks like in terms of defense in depth, using standards, using different regulations and guidelines and directives from the industry. Then we'll look into the Fortinet solutions and technologies, and then we end the session with the key takeaways from the presentation itself. This is one of the statistics that we published through our report. It is collected from the Ransomware Statista. Basically, it's a database that collects the ransomware attacks or threat vectors in the industry, and it's just a snapshot of those attacks here. If you see on the screen, we started with a small virus, and then it moved on very sophisticated virus like Stuxnet, etc., etc. And now we are in the verge of ransomware attacks, where we have typical IT-related attacks used as a target for used as as kind of a, I won't say the target, as a tool to target the critical infrastructure or ICS or SCADA systems. So it's not like developing a very sophisticated piece of malware to attack the critical infrastructure. Any small script kiddie person can go online, buy this ransomware, and target a very sophisticated infrastructure. If there are loopholes and gaps in the security infrastructure, then yes, those infrastructures are vulnerable. Just to give an idea of what happened recently in the media, anybody familiar with this screen? So this is one of the story that was published recently in the media, and this story talks about how the ripple effect of these attacks happens in the industry. So we have similarly seen these things like there is outages, there are service downtimes, there are issues with the infrastructure. Because of that, we are not able to maintain the SLA. And if you are familiar with this screen, it was a similar screen going around in the media. You might have seen this screen. If somebody knows this screen, they know what attack it was and how it happened. Just to give an idea what happened, actually, it is the Garmin that was affected with a ransomware attack. So if you know Garmin, it's a NASDAQ listed company, and what they have declared in the news, or they issued a statement in the news that today it was the victim of cyber attack, and because of that cyber attack, some of their systems were encrypted. Who was affected with this attack? This is coming directly from the horse's mouth. Aviation industry, automotive industry, fitness, marine, outdoor, lifestyle, etc. Those industries were affected by this attack. The attack happened effectively like on July 23rd. That's what it was disclosed in the news. However, the effect of that attack had a ripple effect. So it's not just the Garmin infrastructure was attacked, but the connected infrastructure that basically revolves around the services Garmin provides to the industry and the services Garmin offers as a solution provider to broader audiences. So it was aviation industry that utilizes Garmin GPS sensors and Garmin GPS appliances for tracking purpose, for flight navigation purpose, for making route decisions. Similarly, automotive industry utilizes their GPS for navigation purposes. So that was also affected. People were not able to utilize the GPS sensor. People were not able to utilize the saved route. Similarly, fitness enthusiasts, they were affected. In the same scale, the marine industry that is totally relying on GPS, navigating the sea, navigating the ocean, crew were not able to basically go back and analyze what route they have to take. So imagine the effect of a simple ransomware attack causing a big disruption in the whole industry. And the more interesting part here on the screen is, or in the statement, if you look at when the attack happened, it was on July 23rd. When they released this statement is July 27, and that's where they said that affected systems are being restored and normal operations is expected soon. So it was not fully restored, but they expect basically the normal operation will resume soon. And that is basically 5 days business lost. So that was the attack that affected not just Garmin, everybody. For 5 days, the whole business was lost in that duration. And some media outlets suggest basically the Garmin basically paid kind of a ransomware to restore those systems. So there were no internal security controls, efficient security controls available to restore basically the system to normal operations, and they had to rely on the attacker itself by paying ransomware amount. And how much was the ransomware amount? It was $10 million. That's the amount they claimed basically, or that's the amount it was suggested in the news media that they paid. So imagine the ripple effect of the attack, the business disruption, plus the amount they paid. And the screen I was talking about on the left, that is a screen from my own mobile phone. So that is the watch I use from Garmin for fitness and notification purposes. And the moment I was about to get up and see what's happening with my fitness or sleep, calculation, etc., I was not able to connect to the servers, and I got this message. And I found in the news that they were attacked. Immediately, I turned off my Bluetooth, and you can see the ripple effect of the attack. If imagine the attack was a sophisticated attack. It was just a ransomware attack, which was targeted for the connected infrastructure from Garmin. It was not for the infrastructure they provide as services to the consumers. So imagine if it was connected through, or it was the core infrastructure, if it was attacked, it could have a very massive disruption or very massive destruction actually for the connected devices. So they could, through that vector, they could encrypt the devices that were connected through the Garmin ecosystem. My mobile could have been encrypted. My data could have been encrypted on my mobile phone because my mobile phone is connected with my watch on our Bluetooth. My mobile phone is connected with Garmin website over internet connection. So imagine the ripple effect from this small attack. We call it as a ransomware attack, but the effect of these attack in the ecosystem. Similarly, if you know the other issue that we have come across in the industry, similar to the services we offer as a service right now, and we have basically moved to a service-oriented kind of infrastructure, and we have services across platform. We have services from as an infrastructure, we have services from as a software. We call it SaaS or LaaS or PaaS, platform as a service. The hacker ecosystem or ransomware ecosystem also is moving into that direction, and now we have ransomware as a service. So ransomware is not like a sophisticated piece of malware somebody has to develop. It has become like a service right now. You can just get online, buy some ransomware, tune it for a target or victim, and then launch an attack. Following that same Garmin attack, just after like 2 days or 3 days, this thing was there in the news, and we are familiar with this screen. We see this screen often in ransomware kind of attack, that the system is encrypted. You just get a boot message or some message like this that you have to pay some kind of ransomware. You have to contact on this email address, or you have to contact on this login, and then you basically get a decryption key to restore your data, or you get your data back to original state. And this was there in the news, and it was a story published actually in the Reuters. It was, I think, 31st July or something. They had released this news, but the event happened immediately after Garmin attack. If you follow me on this story, it's a very interesting thing here. The story was published like this thing happened in the internet during that week. US travel management firm was hit with a Ragnar Locker malware, ransomware basically. The company agreed to pay and handle over 4.5 million in Bitcoin. So Garmin supposedly paid 10 million. Now this company handed over 4.5 million. Why? Because they do not have any incident response plan in place. They do not have any security mechanism in order to identify this kind of attack, or in first place protect this from happening. Following on that same story, the hackers initially demanded $10 million ransom. What ensued was lots of haggling. So it's becoming more of like a business transaction right now. So there was a discussion that this whole thing was available online, and they were the hackers basically left it online. They were supposed to wipe out this information, but it was picked up by Reuters, and then it's a whole story available, for read and to get some kind of a lessons from this whole thing. So it's becoming more like a business right now, and they are haggling between a price. So they are basically haggling for a special price to get a decryption key, and hackers or the person or the attackers who basically encrypted this organization's data, they are launching kind of a support portal to provide services. So it's like a support desk to get a decryption key and get free from the encrypted malware, or the malware that encrypted the data. So it's a whole ecosystem developing in the industry right now. Personally, I was surprised at how professional and collegial the whole conversation was from beginning to end, and this was treated as a business transaction for both the parties. So it's becoming basically business transaction. And they are basically negotiating between 3.7 million to 8 million, 4 million, and that's a discussion there from 10 million down to the discounted amount. And ultimately, they have solved that issue with the supposedly 4.5 million, or the amount that paid. And then at the end of the transaction, the hackers are providing some kind of advice to the victim that you should have implemented these security controls into your environment in order to prevent and evade this kind of attack in future. So they are basically giving kind of a guidance now and suggesting the organization that you should have these controls implemented into your organization. So imagine this, how far it is going. It is becoming more of a sarcasm. It is becoming more of a business transaction. It is becoming more of a challenging for the organization itself to return to a normal business. because of this attack. And this whole conversation ended with a nice gesture and etc. The moral behind is that if you look at the timeline, the conversation started 27th of July, it ended on 28th of 7. The transaction basically ended in 24 hours timeline. That 24 hours timeline has destroyed the business reputation and etc. So imagine if this kind of attack happens for ICS and OT infrastructure, when we call it like 5.9 availability or 99.999 availability, and typically we usually get 2 hours downtime during the whole year. And if that infrastructure is off for 24 hours, or in Garmin case, it is similar to like an IoT platform or ICS or OT platform that was off for 5 days. So imagine the destruction it could cause. It's a small piece of malware. It's not a sophisticated threat like a Stuxnet. It's a small piece of malware. In Garmin case, it was Vested Locker. In the other victim's case, travel agency company, it was another known malware, Ragnar Locker. So it's a Windows-based malware. Similarly, you can buy online, tune it, and launch an attack. The lessons learned out of that: Garmin supposedly paid 10 million. The other victim supposedly paid discounted 4.5 million ransom, and the loss incurred because of the service disruption as well as reputation damage done. So perhaps more than the security budgets of both the victims. So if they had any, that much amount, if they had spent on the security controls by implementing some kind of a perimeter control, some kind of a detective or preventive mechanism, they could have evaded this whole attack. They could have evaded this whole, shamble in the media and etc. That's the idea behind defense in depth security, and how do you implement defense in depth security. And this is where the trend is moving right now. So the trend is not sophisticated cyber attacks. The trend is becoming more and more common attacks. Utilize it for famous victims, or utilize it for reputed victims. So that's the idea behind it. The whole ecosystem revolves around we have solutions to offer as a solution provider, as a Fortinet. Hackers also have solutions to offer to other hackers, and they also have solutions and kind of channels to victimize their targets. So in terms of, if you look at threat intel framework, for any threat to materialize, it requires these 3 pillars. So you need the hacker basically needs some kind of a capability, or the attacker or the malicious actor, you may call it, would require these 3 capabilities in order to achieve a successful cyber attack, or in order to successfully manipulate a vulnerability or attack some target. It requires a capability. The attacker should be capable. The attack should have intent. So it's a motivation, basically, the other word for intent. They should be motivated. So yes, they are motivated. They need money. They are capable of doing it. We have seen in the media, they are capable of doing it. The whole ecosystem is available for them. What they really need is the opportunity. So that is where the security controls rely in our infrastructure, that we basically reduce the hackers' opportunity to carry out these 2 pillars, capability and intent, in order to exploit those malicious code or those vulnerabilities that exist into our infrastructure. So to summarize, hackers have currency, they have Bitcoin, they have various different digital currencies to utilize. They can trade into that. They have efficient and anonymous communication channels. So we have seen communication channel. They have a support channel basically to offer services. They have channels which are anonymous, like they can use Tor on Onion network. They can go a dark web channel to communicate. They can utilize some sophisticated email channels like Rocket Mail, etc. So there are many examples. So they have efficient channels to communicate with the victim. So they know the victim. So it suggests that they also know the victim's infrastructure, and they know the vulnerabilities of the victim's infrastructure. Similarly, they are master of their business, so they know what to do, and they know the victim's weaknesses. That's the part here to highlight, that they are aware of each and everything of victims' capabilities. They are aware of where the weaknesses lies in victims' infrastructure, and they are just waiting for a perfect opportunity. So what they need is basically the opportunity here. Similarly, we have published, we have seen these attacks coming back to the ICS and OT infrastructure, because the topic is around critical infrastructure, and I pretty much deal in critical infrastructure. And we have a poll question around critical infrastructure. What basically are your challenges when you want to secure your ICS or SCADA infrastructure? And we published this detailed report in the guideline that we have shared recently in the part in the form of a report or survey report. And if you can see on the screen, 34% of the organizations outsource aspects of ICS and SCADA security. And similarly, the other aspect of that, the 58% organization had one breach in past 12 months. So 58% of the organization know that they were breached. The ones they were breached and they do not want to disclose the information, we have no idea about that. And these 58% are the ones they came on board and they said that they were breached. And only 10% reported they never having an OT security breach. So that is the idea here, that only 10% claims to be not having any security breach. So it's a very wrong assumption that we are not breached and we do not have a security issue in our infrastructure, or nobody has basically penetrated the security infrastructure that we have in place for ICS and OT security. What are the best practices we can follow to evade certain attacks like these, or to efficiently implement security controls into the ICS and OT infrastructure? This is also part of our operational technology report, and I'm just going to go through those principles. The first principle basically is the next generation air gap. So what is the next generation air gap? It's a myth basically, kind of. We used to see that ICS and OT infrastructure or critical infrastructures are disconnected. There's no connection. Those are air gap systems. So I have been in the ICS and OT industry working past 20 plus years, and past 20 years, something down the line, it was a myth to connect a SCADA system to the internet, or it was a myth to connect the SCADA system, forget about the internet, to connect to the enterprise side of the organization. So it was a myth to connect this critical infrastructure to the enterprise side. Now, today's world, it's a myth not to connect these infrastructure to the enterprise side, because the business demands automation, the business demands some kind of intelligence, the business wants some kind of analytics to be obtained from the ICS and OT vertical or ICS and OT part of the organization in order to derive some business decision. So there is no practical air gap. It's a theoretical concept. There is an air gap. There are a lot of breach points that can allow any attack vector to exploit the vulnerabilities into the ICS and OT environment. So that's where we have to basically concentrate and find out what are those vulnerabilities are in the ICS and OT environment. Similarly, the second part, yes, we have identified the vulnerabilities, we have identified where are our gaps, and we have identified the loopholes in the infrastructure. It's not about just buying a solution and implementing it. For example, each solution and each subsystem is limited for its capability. So firewall is not going to provide you endpoint protection. So firewall is meant for network security. It's going to just do network security. For the endpoint security is a different solution itself. It's a different control you have to put for the endpoints. A user access is a different control itself. A remote access security capability is a different control itself. So you have to look from the control perspective, security control perspective, to avoid just relying on one solution for your security infrastructure. That's the second principle here, that each subsystem and subsystem is limited to performing a specific job. Do not rely on a specific security control to achieve generic objective. A specific control is for a specific purpose, and it can only deliver a specific security objective or function. The third principle, know who is lurking onto the system. That is the visibility part. So who is looking after your vulnerabilities? We know attackers know you. Attackers know the weaknesses, the gaps in the security infrastructures. That's how they could exploit it. So they have kind of a thoroughly studied the whole infrastructure more than us. So they know the gaps, they know how to penetrate, where to get into the infrastructure and exploit certain things to achieve best result. So similarly, here we have to follow some kind of a risk-based approach for visibility aspects. So we need to understand what assets we have, what vulnerabilities we have for those assets. Yes, it may sound that it's a very legacy kind of exercise. Risk management is a boring thing, but that's how the whole industry revolves around for effective security implementation. So you need to understand what are your assets are, what are the vulnerabilities and weaknesses in those assets, and what threat vector or threats can exploit those vulnerabilities, and what are your known and unknown threats as well. So that is more of a holistic approach for visibility aspect. So it's not just visualizing your assets, it's visualizing your vulnerabilities, visualizing your threats, whether internal threats or external threats, and then basically combining them together, deciding on your risk factor. So what are the risks you have, and then basically implementing security controls for defending those risks. The fourth principle, assume that you have already been breached. So that is the best approach here. And I have done a lot of penetration testing in the industry. And when you get into the infrastructure, they say, yeah, we have so many security controls, we have these things, we have these things, we have these things. And the moment you start penetrating the infrastructure, the organizations basically get shocked. Like, okay, we didn't know that we missed this thing. We didn't know that we had this kind of a virus already in our infrastructure. We don't know that there was a malware running in our platform and it was communicating to CNC or remote server, etc. So those are the things comes into picture when you do some kind of a vulnerability assessment or penetration testing exercise. In a safer way, yes, it's best to do that, but just assume that you are already affected. So that's the best approach, to go for implementing security controls, so you know that yes, we are already affected and these are the issues we have to tackle, and then yes, based on that you decide your security controls, and not just picking the solution, not just picking the product by getting off-the-shelf solution and implementing an infrastructure, but following a holistic approach that basically suggests safety, reliability, and security all together. When it comes to ICS and OT, you just don't want to throw in security solutions there. You need to consider the reliability and safety aspects as well. And you have to follow some kind of a holistic approach, which is based on certain standards, certain risk management framework, we typically call as RMF. So, identify which framework is suitable for your organization and adapt that framework for your need and for your purpose. Similarly, an advice from Fortinet or from myself from the industry, you can rely on industry standard best practices that comes in the form of regulation or in form of standards. Typically, some countries have their own regulations developed around critical infrastructure. Predominantly in the US, it's very common because they basically rely on third parties for operational purpose. So they outsource their critical infrastructure aspects to third party. On the top of that, they just want to regulate certain aspects of the services. So they want to regulate electricity. Similarly, they want to regulate cybersecurity controls for that particular operator. So there are various regulations available in industry. Ultimately, it maps back to standards, and those standards basically becomes kind of a guiding stone for us, or kind of a guiding principle when we want to implement a holistic cybersecurity approach. So there are some guidelines available. Those are free for reference, etc. And there are some specific standards available from standard bodies that can be utilized for implementing or following a holistic approach. From a recommendation perspective from Fortinet and based on industry experience, you have to follow a holistic approach of governance, risk and compliance, clubbed with a security architecture. So do not rely on just conducting Excel-based risk assessment. Follow some kind of a holistic approach, starting from some RF risk management framework. You can utilize 27001. You can utilize 62443. 62443 also suggests some kind of a high-level risk assessment, then detailed risk assessment. And you can utilize for compliance perspective NIST CSF, which is predominantly known as cybersecurity framework, and it's done by a NIST organization, and it's available as a guideline for public use. So it's not chargeable, but other two standards are chargeable. It's not for free. However, it can benefit you if you basically get a licensed version of this standard and go through the controls. So what that going to provide you some kind of assurance into your implementation that the controls that you implemented are working properly, and kind of providing you some kind of assurance on the continuous or continual improvement. Similarly, the architectures are available from the industry that you can utilize for the whole enterprise if you're IT and OT kind of infrastructure operator or owner, or if you're just running the OT infrastructure, then there are very specific framework like Purdue Enterprise Reference Architecture, and then Enterprise Information Security architecture from Gartner, or SAPSA if you are an enterprise that is more into offering security services. So there are various guidelines and frameworks available that you can follow for your benefit, and follow a standards-based approach rather than picking products and solutions from the industry. And one of the things that Fortinet offers, that is, we call it as a platform approach for security, because everything in the ICS and OT industry, it works as a platform. So you have platform from, let's say, ABB, you have platform from Schneider, you have platform from Siemens. It's not a solution or product coming from Siemens. So the OT or ICS infrastructure does not work on one component. It's an integrated solution that provides automation and process control capabilities, and it comes as a platform. It is the same approach Fortinet follows when providing cybersecurity solutions or kind of a problem-solving systems to OT and ICS vertical. So we offer as a platform. So we do not go and sell just only the firewall. Yes, there are firewalls that are known for enterprise side, and Fortinet is known for that. But the approach that we have for OT and ICS is more of a broad and integrated and automated approach. We are not suggesting here that you buy everything from Fortinet. We have an ecosystem where you can even integrate with ICS and OT components coming from the automation industry, and similarly a security solution coming for OT from the OT cybersecurity solution provider. It's not one-day job. It's a maturity-based growth for cybersecurity or implementation. It starts with a basic implementation to higher level implementation, and again it has to be justifiable by the cost and risk that you have and that you want to mitigate. The platform that we supply or we offer as a Fortinet includes security-driven networking. It's not a firewall as a component. It's a platform that supports different pillars of the security, which is in principle is the security-driven networking. And then when it goes to the down layer of the ICS and SCADA, there is a zero trust network access. Then if it's connecting to the enterprise side, then is dynamic cloud security. And then it's just not the solution aspects of technology. It is how you operate the technology, how you maintain that technology over a life cycle of its implementation. So that is through our AI-driven security operations capability that offers some kind of a seamless management and an ecosystem there where you can connect with third parties and you can integrate third parties to become part of the fabric and manage the whole ecosystem as a platform, not just as a solution. Similarly, this whole concept of security fabric is to allow digital transformation and enable some kind of a digital innovation, and then as a broader portfolio of solutions and products available through the security fabric channel. It's the Fortinet internal components as well as the components offered from third parties that can integrate with the fabric, and it's an open ecosystem. It's not restricted to Fortinet. It goes beyond Fortinet ecosystem to outside world. Key takeaways from the presentation: do not rely on assumptions. The digital attack surface is perpetually growing with the connected and digital transformation that's happening in the industry. It's not a connected IoT and IIoT or IT/OT platform. It's everything. We have seen from Garmin's case. We have seen from a typical travel agency company who is just basically selling tickets and everything. And just yesterday there was a news about the marine industry that one of the ship company was attacked and their marine vessels were infected with certain malware. So these issues are going to come. So that's a reality right now. Identify the weaknesses in your digital infrastructure, apply a risk-based approach. Do not just rely on picking up the asset and finding the vulnerability and then solving that solution at that point, but look at the holistic aspects of the cybersecurity implementation. Look at your infrastructure, look at your assets, look at the whole vulnerabilities for your infrastructure, and define some kind of approach for risk management. Move on to the holistic side using a standards approach. Follow some guidelines from the industry, follow some standards instead of solving point-in-time problems when you want to implement a security infrastructure for ICS and OT. And typically the life cycle for ICS and OT system is not for 2 days or 3 days or 1 year or 2 years. It's typically 15 years and 30 years. So you have to look at that aspect as well when you're devising a security or cybersecurity strategy for critical infrastructure. Choose a platform approach instead of point products. Remember, cybersecurity does not end with just zones, security zones and conduits, or implementing segmentation, implementing a network firewall. It goes beyond. It's a lifecycle approach, and that lifecycle approach has to be supported by some kind of a mechanism which revolves around incident response, threat intel, and it's just all different capabilities. And this whole thing, once you have implemented, audit using some kind of industry compliance framework from the known industrial and automation control system bodies. They have some compliance frameworks available for the industry, those who want to audit their implementation. So audit is not a bad thing. Audit is a good thing. You can do internal audit or external audit in order to understand where your gaps are, not in the gaps into finding out where we are bad at, but basically identifying those gaps and implementing preventive or detective controls to mitigate the risk. So that's the idea behind audits. You can audit your implementation, pre-implementation during the implementation and post-implementation for continuous improvement. That's it from my side, and thank you for listening to the presentation.
Thank you, Aasef, for sharing those thoughtful insights. Before we go forward, maybe we can have an audience poll. Ashok?
And if there are any questions also, we can take those questions right now, or probably I guess it's better to have it at the end of the presentation or something.
Yeah. So I think the audience can start keying in their questions, and right now we'll have a discussion, and after that maybe we can take the audience questions.
Sure.
Okay. So I would now like to invite Farhan Khan, CIO of Radico Khaitan, on the screen. Farhan, if you can come. Hi, Farhan. Can you hear us? I think Farhan, you're on mute.
Not somebody else. Yeah.
Oh,
I think someone, the organizer, have muted me.
okay. So we welcome Farhan Khan, CIO of Radico Khaitan, to the discussion. So now me, Aasef, and Farhan will have a small discussion. So I think I'll just continue with the ransomware thing, because this ransomware as a service is a very fascinating thing. I mean, nobody would have heard of people in the dark net giving it as a service, giving instructions. There are people licensing it out and, even charging a 10% cut and having a support service. And it's something amazing no one would have thought of. So first question I'd like to ask both of you is, what is this? Is it a passing fad, or will it get worse, or will it go? And is there any way out of it? Like, virus was a big problem. We had an antivirus package. Is there such thing as an anti-ransomware package, or will it always be, a combination of best practices? So I'd like to know where this ransomware industry or what business is going from both of you.
I mean, if you look at the terminology itself.
Sunil, I remember, Phulan Devi and Daguman Singh.
Okay.
So we have a sophisticated Daku Singh, which are available. They are well educated, and I believe it's human behaviors, right? That's how you have to protect something. And there are people who are more visionary, more powerful than you. They will see how to bypass the systems, and it's happening in social fabrics, if you see all around. And but I really salute the way these guys conduct their business, because the whole knowledge is basically to understand how our enterprise is working, what are the loopholes within the organization. The people, those are spending a hell of amount within the organization, even they don't know what are the loopholes. Within few months, they know, they study the whole situation and they come up with certain kind of situation where you have to be you have to pay something, or the situation which Aasef has basically narrated through two different kind of examples. So in my opinion, I think the COVID is basically, as you said, and I believe it. COVID is not a situation for them; it's a crime, and we have seen, I think, from March onward, the attack has increased in so many folds. We as in CIO, we have seen within our organization itself, that these things has increased in so many fold, and management is very much concerned. And similarly, the work from home culture, where the insecure or unsecured internet access which is being used by the employees or even the families also. This is one of the threat basically which is coming on forth. So it's basically a combination of all. And I believe if you look at the future, most of the companies, like you see Facebook and Google, they have said June 2021, or some says October, December 2021, work from home has been granted. So things like ransomware and all, I think this is going to be part of parcel of our IT culture. And of course, one day as Aasef has introduced, I love these services, ransom as a service. So
I mean, it is to the extent that it is to the extent now the ransomware has become to extent that even they want to do a cryptocurrency mining using somebody's infrastructure. So it has gone beyond. So why not just use their infrastructure for benefiting from the processing power, from the electricity, from the whole generation of the crypto mining, without informing them. So that is the idea behind this whole as a service. And they are selling this outside in the dark web. So it's available. If you know how to get into dark web, you'll see a lot of things going on there. And sometimes as an ethical challenge, it lures you, should I work with Fortinet or should I join the hacking team? So is it challenge for a professional as well? It's a more money there, whether it's an ethical dilemma for the professional world itself. So it's becoming more challenging for the professionals as well to tackle these issues. Similarly, the organizations that are targeted and affected, they are basically kind of becoming victimized. Publicity and then kind of a reputation damage. They just want to get onto the operation, just pay money, get the decryption key, and decrypt it. There's no other solution to that.
Yeah. So, Farhan, one more thing I was thinking, I don't get any news out of India ransomware. I get it all over the world. So why is that? Are ransomware attacks not happening in India, or are the Indian companies hiding?
It is happening.
Okay.
Yeah, it is happening and we are hiding. And I know one of my two friends, those are the CIOs in a different continent part of India, they have paid. Even I was also being attacked. But somehow the server which they attacked, or what they thought of is one of the server which is holding the whole enterprise. So it was a server which is just catering to one of the states. So I just cut off my server. That's it.
Okay.
So it is happening. In my experience, I have seen, and I know people to whom I know, they have paid for it.
Okay. So Aasef, like Farhan has said that it's happening in India and like it's being hidden, but worldwide I hear a lot of news about ransomware. So which are the countries and industries and verticals which are targeted the most globally?
Each and every one. Imagine if, let's say, it was a sophisticated attack from Garmin using we call it as a honey pot or kind of a keyhole to get into the mobile phones of the users. So my watch could have been encrypted. My mobile could have been encrypted by using the same channel. So it's not just limited to targeting Nasdaq listed companies. Whoever can pay the money, it's collecting money is the motive there. So they are motivated. They are capable of doing it. They study the whole thing, as Farhan said. So they have the whole idea more than us. What are our assets are? What are our vulnerabilities are? So they know where to get into and then how to victimize the targets.
Okay. And Farhan, one more thing, I mean, when you look at the India market, we have been relatively slow at digital adoption and transformation from the rest of the world. But after COVID, we are being jumped into it. So do you think now that there's going to be a sudden digital acceleration, people are going to be scrambling? Do you think now that ransomware attacks could increase in India? Because I mean, as hackers are always waiting. So suddenly in the next 1 year, a lot of people are going to jump on the digital bandwagon. Is there really a scare which Indian companies could see?
Actually, the straight answer is yes. The reason behind it, if you look at the data, means I am a part of CIO organization, CIO of India, and I was talking to most of the CIOs. What they've also said, whether they are digitally matured or not, but looking at the COVID scenario, which I was talking about from April onward, the attack has increased. The vulnerabilities has increased in multiple fold. So they're worried. They're worried about the existing infrastructure which they have as of now. And of course, looking at the situations that we are in, most of the organizations are going for the digitalizations, automations. There are a lot of RPAs, and the organizations are looking for a chatbot is also one of the answer for the some processes which is going to be. And of course, IoT adoption is going to be in a multiple fold in the next 1 year and 1 to 5 years down the line. Now, the point is this: what does it mean? That means we are going from manual process or some semi-automated process to we are going to digitalized process. Now, whenever you go and you talk about the processing to be digitalized, such kind of things will be part of a parcel, whether it is hacking or whether it is virus effect or anything which comes out, it's just a part of it. And we also make sure that the security of this also can be part of the complete infrastructure. So I believe it is yes.
Okay. And like Asif, one thing world over, like we have full digitization in some places. So have you noticed, are certain operating systems more vulnerable? Are certain types of servers more, vulnerable? And is there any way, like UTM boxes or something? Is there any technology that has been able to counter it?
So when it comes to the operating system, when you look at from the software development point of view, any operating system you pick it from the market, there is a principle to that. So if you have 1,000 line of a code, there are going to be at least 3 errors in the code, or there are going to be at least 3 issues in the code. And any operating system has trillions lines of code, and it's not really possible for them to go through all that base coding practices to develop kind of a very sophisticated operating system. Yes, you could do that. It will be only limited to its functionality. It will not be like what the features we want today. We want connectivity to this platform. We want connectivity to that platform. We want interoperability. We want so many multimedia features, etc., etc., etc. So typically, the operating system coming from open source industry are more vulnerable to this kind of attack because there's a lot of open source code is attached to that. But also, it is more watched basically. So the whole open source community is basically watching those operating system. Similarly, some operating systems that are very specific for ICS and OT infrastructure, like typically we utilize a Spark platform or Sun Solaris platform or Unix or HPUX or Unix-based platform. So those are not vulnerable because they are designed for very specific purpose. The more we go into the more commodity kind of operating system like Windows, Mac OS, it's a fad basically to call Mac OS is more secure. It is more secure because it is control from various angles of security. It's not as much adopted by the industry as compared to Windows. So you see Windows or Android as a common adoption in the community. We know technology or digital adoption as a commodity. So I'm buying a mobile phone. I don't look at the operating system part of the mobile phone as a general user. I'll just go with the features. If there are vulnerabilities, I don't care about that as a general user. There may be a crypto miner running on my mobile phone that could be vulnerable for a platform that I'm connecting to a wireless connection, etc. So we are not looking from that aspect. So yes, any operating system you take from the market is a code that is running behind it. It's a vulnerable. I'll just give you 2 very good examples because we also do a lot of threat intel capability in Fortinet. 2019, I guess it was June, there was a vulnerability disclosed for VxWorks. So VxWorks is the operating system used in a lot of controllers and RTUs and PLCs. What happened is that the automation companies like ABB, Siemens, or GE, they did not have any issues into their platform. But what happened? They outsourced these things, like they bought some component from outside, that is VxWorks platform, to provide TCP/IP based connectivity to certain functions, and that platform was vulnerable. A team came up basically in the industry, they validated the platform and they found like 11 different vulnerabilities, and it was famous in the ICS and OT industry. It was referred as Urgent 11. Everything connected in the industry was infected or was affected by that Urgent 11 disclosure. So it was not just the Siemens platform, it was everything that was using the IPNet stack. Moving on to the next year, like this year, the same time in November, or I think, it was in July, I guess, or just last month or 2 months back, we have seen Ripple 20. So some 21 different vulnerabilities were disclosed, again, on the IPNet stack or TCP/IP stack from a third party again. So you see here, the whole solution portfolio from automation vendor is relying on service-based approach. They are obtaining services from somebody. and they don't know, they are not validating those components and those softwares. So it's beyond the operating system. It's going beyond just a simple Android platform. It's going beyond to controller level. So those are also infected or affected by these attacks or vulnerabilities. The solution to that, we have standards available. The best approach to that, have some kind of a supply chain security implemented as part of your validation process. You vet any device going to your ICS and OT infrastructure when it comes to implementing any critical controls. So you basically have some kind of a mechanism around that. You validate those controls, just not buying off the shelf and implementing it.
Okay, so Farhan, what are the industry standards for ICS OT cybersecurity? I mean, how are the standards in India? Are they any different from the rest of the world, and are they robust enough?
See, I believe if you look at in India, there are two set of businesses that we are into. One is there's some few set of businesses that we are into. The few organizations, those are following a standard which is being adopted and used by a different continent, which is ISO standards, and there are different kind of standards for ICT that we have. Similarly, there are business houses which are following certain part of ICT certifications, but not the full. And there are business houses which they are not believing in the certifications. Right? For example, in my company, when I talked to my management, I said that we should go for some certifications specifically for the cybersecurity. They said, no, there is no point. We are not IT company who is going to deliver certain kind of things to the customers. So why do we need that? So what we do, we go for a VAPT. So you go talk to Big Four who will do the VAPT. So it's basically we are relying more on a third Big Four who is coming to the organization and doing VAPT for me and letting me, understanding, what all loopholes and the security issues that we have within the infrastructure that I have. So if you look at the business houses, it's based on the kind of a culture that the business houses that we have, that what kind of framework that they're looking for the business, and what is the futuristic approach which they have. Sunil.
Okay. So, Asif, one more thing I had to like is, does being on the cloud help? Because when we talk of data, one is data theft and one is no access to data. So if a ransomware cuts your data off, is it possible to get the same, to kill that data and get that data from the cloud, or is it too complicated? Does cloud give any, protection from ransomware?
Well, let's say if the cloud is infected with a ransomware, what do you do with that? How do you assure that a cloud infrastructure is secure? So
right.
It's not about having a cloud only solution. Yes, you can use cloud solution if you are capable of understanding the cloud security aspects of it as an organization, because a lot of people, they just think cloud as a bucket, just throw everything there and it's secure. That's not the idea behind here. Cloud is more vulnerable to these attacks because it's publicly available. So there are security evaluations for cloud. So that's one thing you have to assess. It has to be secured in the same manner as you secure your PC by implementing antivirus, host firewall, etc. It's the same concept you have to apply for cloud. The best approach to have, it's a good data retention policy, and have some kind of an offline data set available into your organization itself. And that was one of the things that was done in the Ukraine attack. Ukraine attack is a very famous ICS and critical infrastructure attack that was carried out on the distribution grid. In that attack, they could recover the whole system in 2 days time because they had enough backup available on site. It was not on cloud. So, I mean, for sure, vertical will not keep it on the cloud, but imagine a dependency on the cloud rather than having that in-house on off-site, or somewhere stored into your tape library, or somewhere stored into your media library, etc. So as a recommendation, yes, it's good. Cloud aspect is good. If you can ensure the cloud is secure, then yes, you can keep that as a backup or tertiary backup option. The best secondary option to have that on site available somewhere.
Okay. So Ashok, do we have one more question? Audience poll? If there's one more audience poll, yeah. So I think most had concern about third-party problems. So
Integration.
is that a problem with both of you face on a regular basis?
As a
Farhan?
IT and OT, for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, we have challenges because I'm coming from a customer background as well. I was one of the Fortinet customer before, and I have dealt with, you can count that many technologies for cybersecurity implementation in the industry. And this was the big challenge to convince the automation vendor that we want to rely on a cybersecurity solution provider for implementing security. He will come up with at least 10 different excuses not to allow you a cybersecurity implementation into your infrastructure, because it will make his job problematic. He will not have any access, or his system may not work, and we will be concerned from the operational point of view. Security, rather than promoting the business, could break the business itself, could disturb the whole communication. So it's the biggest challenge we have as a solution provider, to convince the customer that yes, the solution is compatible with Siemens platform. The solution can work very well with the ABB platform, or solution can work with Schneider, etc. So that's how we rely on our alliance partnership. That's one of the offering we have, that we have very good alliance partnership with these automation vendor, and that's really a challenge to convincing a customer. Myself, I was a customer, and as a solution provider, to ensure to the customer that yes, we are compatible with their platform, etc.
Yeah, Farhan, same problems or?
So Neil, one more point where I would like to add here: security, as in technology is tech. There are, I think, not too much players like CRM or any software that we have, so to call. In software stack, for every problem, we have a product, and one product of one organization is different from the other product of a different organization. Now, when you have a problem, the problem statement says that I have this much problem. One statement is said that I need to protect my information at a endpoint. There should not be a leakage, and I also need to have a productivity of my employee. Now, these three statements, the security company will come up with the 4 or 5 products. Then you need to buy this, and you need to buy this also, if you have to, go by with your statement. Now, these products is always confused to the customers. Say for one single functionality that I'm looking to secure my infrastructure, I need to buy a product. Why can't be my existing product that I use, whether it is my DLP or it is my, let's say, endpoint security, or let's say my antivirus. So if I look at my antivirus, I cannot see the productivity of my employee. DLP is also doesn't have such kind of functionality. Even my endpoint security also is not having it. So I need to buy a different product, though they are doing the similar job. So for such kind of things, then it comes to hibernation. That means I need to buy something from Symantec, something from, let's say, for Fortinet, something from somebody else. Then the integration comes into it. So this somewhere we need to look at the product also, that what kind of framework that we are coming up with the products, and what, for example, an antivirus. It's just a thought. Maybe I'm a guy who started my career when the COBOL was the language was used. It means the EDP time. The guy, maybe the new CIO will add more value to it. A DLP, DLP cannot work as a endpoint security also. Then the question comes, the objectives are different. So my point is that why we have so many boxes, or of course now it is everything is on cloud. So why we cannot consolidate it into one and make sure that the objective of any organization to protect the data, whether it is a threat or prevention, it has to be taken care of.
Okay, so actually we are running out of time, but I think I just can take a couple of audience questions. So what Farhan asked, somebody has asked a similar question, maybe Aasef can answer. It says, what are your suggestions regarding cybersecurity strategy for IT OT convergence? So I mean, is there anything that is helpful for the convergence of everything?
I mean, convergence, we have challenge. I mean, as a user between both the IT and OT sector, I was in the IT side, then I was moved to the OT sector, and then there is a fight between them. That's what you see at the end. OT want to rely on continuous operation, IT want to put security controls on them, and they come from the CISO angle that we have a CISO, OT does not have a CISO. We basically kind of give you guideline what to do in your infrastructure. So there is a depagle between these two sectors. That's one issue. That is the internal challenges that you have to solve using educating the people. So you have to educate the OT guys for IT security, IT guys for the OT operational requirement. That's one issue. Second thing, you cannot typically deploy IT security controls into the OT environment. That's another issue. You have to ensure that the security controls that you're selecting for OT security implementation are different than IT. So you cannot just get on buying an antivirus solution and implementing that on a real-time HMI system. It doesn't work. It will break the whole productivity. It will break the whole ecosystem of automation. So the technological selection, that challenges. So it has to be kind of a, I would say, mixed approach between IT and OT enterprise, not just looking a solution for IT, looking a solution for OT. It has to be an enterprise approach. You may call it IT/OT enterprise approach. You may call it umbrella approach. It has to be a broad approach, understanding the needs for OT, aligning the requirement with IT security strategy, because IT security work will happen through the ISMS point of view. It's an information security management system. And here in the OT, you are responsible for data, you are responsible for critical events, you're responsible for logging. So it's more of a data oriented. They don't care much about the information. Yes, information is important. They care more about the data, operational issues and all that. So it has to be a balanced approach. It has to be understood from the strategic point of view. And there are standards coming up right now in the industry, like 62443 is a standard that can be utilized in conjunction with ISO 27001. So it can be clubbed with the IT security strategy and can align both these different sectors into one umbrella framework. So there are various ways of achieving that from the strategy point of view. There are various ways to achieve that from the technological point of view. And there are ways to achieve that on the people aspect, because it all revolves around people, process, technology. So it has to be a balanced approach. It has to be a very kind of understanding approach, not a very restrictive, that this is the policy we have for IT, which is 15 characters password, and you have to set 15 characters on your RTU. It doesn't work. RTU does not support password sometimes. RTU does not support more than 4 characters password. So it has to be a balanced approach.
Yeah, okay. So actually we're out of time, but maybe one last question, which I'll ask both of you. Farhan can speak first and then Aasef. Basically, somebody's asking, what is the biggest challenge in providing a solution, in the OT space? If you could just pick up one big challenge, which would it be?
See, I believe, Sunil, that the larger solution, that problem that I see is mobile as of now. That I can see that it's now playing a very critical role in our enterprise infrastructure architecture. But the security is a big concern as of now. It's a big challenge.
Okay. And Aasef, what would you agree to that, or you think what is the biggest challenge?
Yeah, I agree to that. So the connectivity is the biggest challenge. We want to get onto the this transformation journey of we could call it enterprise industry 4.0, industrial revolution, or enterprise convergence, whatever the name you call it. When there is a connected world, there are different requirements from these different industries, whether IT or OT. How do you meet that requirement from a solution provider perspective? And that goes back to our discussion of, do you have alliance partnership with the automation vendor? Do they kind of provide some kind of accreditation to your solution? Do they provide some kind of a certification to your solution? So convincing the customer, that is more challenging in terms of who is coming from OT background than convincing automation people. IT side convincing is good. We can convince. You can go online, you can look at Gartner. How about the OT side? There's no Gartner results, or there is no Gartner or assessment or NSS Lab assessment available for OT security products. So that is a very challenging part. One part is connectivity. Second part is the assurance from third parties or solution providers.
Okay, so I think with that we'll conclude. Farhan, and Aasef. Thank you for that very enlightening discussion, especially ransomware. It's a
Thanks,
very
Sunil.
interesting topic. We will be following it in the future.
It's an ethical dilemma. It's an ethical dilemma.
It's a big dilemma. Okay. So
Thanks, Sunil.
anyway, thank you. On behalf of DATAQuEST and Fortinet, I would like to thank all our participants today for joining this webinar. We hope you found it useful, and don't forget to fill in the feedback form. Have a great evening, everyone. Bye.
See you. Bye.